Hello, everyone, and welcome to StudyTravel TV Live, a show of news, statistics, and opinion. I'm Bethan Norris, Senior Editor of StudyTravel Magazine.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nicola Hancock, Editor of StudyTravel Magazine. Before we get started, for the best viewing experience, please put the call-in side-by-side speaker view. You can see an icon in the top right corner where you can select the view.
We're delighted to welcome you all today to this episode of StudyTravel TV Live. In today's broadcast, we'll start with a news story, and then we'll be joined by our guests this week, Tamsin Plaxton, President of Tamwood in Canada, and Eren Goker, Manager of GKR Educational Counselling and President of Turkish Agency Association, UED.
If you have any questions for the presenters or guest speakers or comments on any of the stories, please do post them in the chat box below and we will read them out at the end. A big thank you to the sponsor of this episode, Londonist.
So let's take a look at our first story this week. Two data reports from Canada and Australia have demonstrated the continuing impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the English language teaching sector in 2021, although current year figures show some encouragement for recovery in both destinations.
Canada was the least impacted of the two markets, with a 12.4% decrease in student numbers to 57,423 for Languages Canada members in 2021, compared with 2020 numbers. Nonetheless, this was barely a third of pre-pandemic levels and the lowest total ever recorded since the association began surveying members.
ELICOS English providers in Australia, meanwhile, suffered a 56% decrease to 39,735 students in 2021, a 20-year low for the sector, with losses from all of the major teaching markets. As Australia's borders remained closed for the majority of last year, some 80% of enrolled students were studying online and outside of Australia.
There were some positives in the Canada data, including growth for Japan, which became the top source country, and for a number of Latin American markets, including Colombia, which recorded its highest ever total.
In Australia, year-to-date commencement data up to May 2022 for the ELICOS sector shows a 19.6% increase in course commencements compared with the previous year, and the number of student visa applications lodged for ELICOS study were at double typical pre-pandemic levels, English Australia said.
So at this point, we'd like to introduce our guests, Eren and Tamsin. Hello, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Nicola.
Hello.
Okay, so Tamsin, we heard about 2021 in Canada there. So can you bring us up to date and tell us how this year is looking so far?
Well, 2022 continues to go up, I think, across all sectors. Obviously, there's a lot of pent-up demand all over the world, I think, to travel abroad generally and to study abroad. And I think Canada fared pretty well through the pandemic. And I think the perception is that Canada is a safe place to travel even now while COVID continues to exist. So we are seeing numbers going up. I think they're slowing down a little bit in the language travel compared to the growth we saw last year, but obviously that's growth year over year, as the report showed. So, you know, going from a low number to a high number shows high growth, but not necessarily higher overall numbers as pre-pandemic. But the higher education sector is definitely taking off this year, and we're seeing massive growth in that.
Okay, Turkey was also one of the growth markets for Languages Canada members in 2021, with a 15.8% increase in student numbers compared with 2020. Do you see that continuing, Eren, or will students spread out more now that other destinations are fully opened?
I believe it will continue. Definitely, it will continue, I would say, because Canada is one of the only markets that didn't close down the borders for Turks, and the embassy was open in Turkey, and the embassy was very proactive and informative for the agencies or language higher education providers. The numbers will definitely go up. Canada is doing a great job in Turkey. More and more students go for the language courses and also for the higher education as well. So numbers will definitely go up. Canada will be one of our top language learning destinations for Turkish students.
Thank you. Canada performed well in a number of markets last year, including Japan and Colombia most significantly. And are there any reasons for this, Tamsin, do you think?
Well, I think, last year we have to look at the fact that Australia and New Zealand were closed. So that definitely helped the Canadian market. Prior to COVID, Australia was a very popular destination with Colombians. And I think the business shifted a bit to Canada, but also a lot of Canadian institutions were very active in Colombia over the last few years, doing some really creative and very, proactive activities in Colombia. And Canada has been very aggressive in its immigration targets, and I think Colombians are seeing Canada as a possible destination and have and continue to see it as a destination for emigration. And the pathway to immigration through education is a very obvious path now. So English language training into higher education to qualify for a post-grad work permit is a very popular path now for immigration, and that's driving a lot of the business all over the world, but specifically in Latin America for Canada and for language travel in Canada.
Okay.
Oh, and Japan. I mean, to speak to Japan, Japan is definitely up a lot. Some of that has to do with the working holiday program, and the fact that the working holiday program got a little bit more complicated during COVID to participate in that program. A lot of the Japanese used to come to Canada, and we'll come back again on the working holiday program. But when that was difficult to participate in, there was a shift into work and study and vocational training. And for Japanese to enter the vocational training market, a lot of them needed to upgrade their English. So it resulted in a higher demand for English language training as a pathway to vocational training. So we definitely saw an increase in that. But also, the fact that they couldn't go to Australia and New Zealand definitely contributed as well.
Okay, and Eren, how about the Turkish outbound market? What kind of performance are you expecting in 2022 compared with the pre-pandemic year of 2019?
I mean, so far 2022 was one of the best years we have ever had. I would say it's going to be a golden year for most of agencies. We already catch up our 2019 numbers, and the numbers are promising. I mean, this still probably we will pass over 2019. And Turkey is one of the still biggest language provider market for many English language schools. And despite the economic difficulties in the country, the demand is extremely strong for the language learner, the language course, and also for the higher education as well. At the moment, the only difficulty we're facing is the delays in the visa process, and of course, the delays related to high number of applications, obviously. This is the only problem at the moment, but it's going to be a very promising, very good year for us.
Okay, good stuff. So let's take a look at another story. Agents are expecting strong growth in placements to the major English-speaking higher education destinations for the 2022-23 academic year, according to a survey of 1,473 agents by Into University Partnerships.
The UK in particular looks set for growth, with 82% of agents expecting to send more students there in 2022-23 compared with the previous year. There were also growth expectations for the USA, 65%, Australia, 63%, and Canada, 59%. The strong outlook for the UK was underscored by 52% expecting to place significantly more students, more than 20 points higher than any other destination.
More than half of the agents surveyed said that post-study work opportunities were a major motivation for students, and Australia was viewed the most favourably in this field among the 3 destinations where Into operates pathway programmes, being Australia, the UK and the USA.
Agents were asked what the most important service priorities were, and 84% cited response times to inquiries. Other factors included response to applications and availability of scholarships.
Eren, we didn't really need this survey to know that demand would be much stronger for tertiary study travel post-COVID. In terms of post-study work rights, Into has asked about the destinations where it currently operates pathways. But what would you say that Canada is the best option, or isn't that the best option for post-study work and migration opportunities?
Yes, I mean, higher education in our country, investment for higher education in overseas is a package. It's not just getting a diploma from overseas, it's also getting some work experience or possibility to establish a life or a future in the country. So in that terms, Canada is doing great with opportunities for the immigration through education. And also UK is picking up with post-study work right opportunities at the UK universities. So whenever a parent or a family comes to us, they ask consultation about studying abroad, when we mention that post-study work rights, it is one of the key factors that affect their decision. And Canada has been so far doing great, I would say. For UK, the post-study right is working very well, and same for Australia. These are the most popular destinations, but also higher education in Europe is increasing in Turkey because in European countries, most countries offer post-study work right as well.
Okay, there certainly seems to be demand out there, but are logistical factors such as visa processing, which you just mentioned, going to get in the way? You've already previously told us about visa delays for Ireland in particular, Eren. How are things now for Ireland and other destinations?
I mean, the problem at this stage is not the visa delays caused by the embassies. The problem is the demand, because most embassies in Turkey have limited staff, and during COVID-19 they reduced their staff, and the boom of the applications made them difficult position. For Ireland language providers, waiting for 6 months is quite normal at the moment. I mean, if a student comes to my office, the earliest time I can send him to Ireland is in February or March. So people wait 6 months to study English. And for UK is getting worse because UK is always very quick at visa decisions, especially during the summer times. We had difficulties, especially for junior summer school students who are just traveling during their summer holidays. The visa process times gone up from 2 weeks to 9 weeks, which causes a lot of cancellations for groups, for individuals, because they can't obtain their visa on time. And also, when these visa application numbers are high, usually our embassies get the new staff to the country to support to staff with the visa process times, and the newcomers to the market are not well trained, and they cause some difficulties, visa refusals as well. So at the moment, the biggest challenge for Turkish market is not the demand, it's not the financial crisis, it's not thinking about the school destinations. The biggest problem here we're facing is the visa delays.
So Tamsin, Tamwood works in the vocational sector and also pathways into higher education partners. And are you confident about everybody getting study permits in time for the academic year? Has the government really supported those establishments catering to tertiary international students, do you think?
There we go. Okay, perfect. Sorry, I muted myself because of a noise in the background. Visa delays have been a big issue in Canada this year. I mean, it was kind of a perfect storm. First of all, as we just heard, a lot of the embassies in Canada as well, the visa offices reduced staff. They had to work from home. They're not allowed to do a lot of the work they do from home. Finally, coming back to the office, they had to bring on new staff, and then the war in Ukraine happened, and Canada made a big commitment to refugees from Ukraine, and that took a lot of resources away from student visa applications. So it's created a huge backlog, but Canada has recently added 500 new visa officers across the world, across its visa centers across the world, and is committed to working its way through the backlog. But it is impacting student starts in Canada. It's certainly impacting it at the tertiary level and at other levels as well. We lost students, for example, in our junior centers this summer because they couldn't get their visas quick enough. And that was just tourist visas. So it's impacting all levels of education. But I think Canada is going to be, catching up and will be caught up within a few months. They're talking about bringing total new hires to 1,200 across the visa offices across Canada and the world within a few months. So we see a lot of resources being put into the problem and solving the problem.
Okay, great. Well, let's hope things improve soon. Let's move on to the next story now. Coming back to the language travel market, there's been a lot of activity in the sector, particularly in Canada. UK headquartered Bayswater Education has expanded its Canada portfolio with the acquisition of the former ELS school in Vancouver, adding to the Stafford House schools in Toronto and Calgary it previously acquired last year.
A few weeks earlier, Ireland-based Centre of English Studies announced it will open a school in Vancouver in October, adding to its Toronto campus in Canada. And Global Village Victoria has just announced a new school in Calgary, returning to a location in which it previously had a centre until early in the pandemic.
In Australia, meanwhile, the International House Sydney Training Services Group has announced the opening of a new IH Adelaide school, and Brown's English Language School has unveiled new campuses in Brisbane and the Gold Coast, following a multi-million-dollar investment.
There has been further good news for the sector over recent weeks, with New Zealand reopening for student visa processing at the end of July, while Malta and France lifted all remaining COVID-19 entry requirements.
So Tamsin, sadly, some centres closed as a result of COVID and some changed hands. Bayswater Education was busy making acquisitions, as were others. Was Tamwood ever tempted to buy over the last 2 years, perhaps in Canada or even overseas?
Well, we didn't have to buy, we just had to wait for somebody to go out of business and take over their space. So I think that was a good strategic move. We did take over International House Whistler space in Whistler just earlier this year, and that's allowed us to have a new space in Whistler, which has been great. We're also expanding into the US, into New York for our junior summer centers. Yeah, I think COVID, unfortunately, we lost some competitors during COVID, but that also created opportunity for people to move into new locations at zero to no cost to low cost, I think. Yeah.
Well, as you mentioned there, do you expect even more competition from global competitors, perhaps looking towards Canada? And is it something that concerns you or not?
No, it doesn't. I mean, we're just seeing replacement of competitors we had before. It's not like the total number of competitors are going up. When one school buys another school, it doesn't really change the number of competitors on the landscape. I think it's healthy, actually. I think having bigger groups with deeper pockets promoting Canada as a destination, a rising tide lifts all boats. So I'm happy to have new companies participating in our market space. Yeah.
Great. And Eren, how are things looking in the Turkish agency sector now in terms of the number of agencies in the market? Did UED lose any members during the pandemic?
I mean, the number of total agencies in Turkey is about 400 to 500 every year. And some of them obviously closed down, especially the ones who recently start business or doesn't have a proper business plan, or small one-man run agencies. For UED, we didn't lose any agency during the pandemic time. We were very flexible as a board, and we did our best to keep our members, not to force them to do anything. But yes, in the market, I have heard of some agencies closed down and the new ones are coming up. This is just the usual way of life. Every year, some agencies close down, some do open up, but the UED, we didn't lose any agency. But we were very flexible about collecting fees, very flexible about regulations, but now it's over, we are back to normal life, and we will see how it goes.
Great, thank you. Okay, we'll take one more story to finish. We are delighted to announce that the finalists for the StudyTravel Star Awards 2022 have been revealed, recognising excellence in service as perceived by their business partners across 22 categories, including language providers, agencies, service providers, industry associations, work experience providers, and vocational colleges.
And the in-person Star Awards Gala dinner is back this year. The winners will be announced on September the 3rd at a special event at Grosvenor House in London, held during the StudyTravel Alpha UK In-Person Plus conference.
Both of our guests today are finalists, we are happy to say. Tamwood is actually up for 4 different categories and is the only provider to have ever achieved this feat, so congratulations for that. Tamsin, I know it's usually just you or Matt that comes to the Star Awards, but I do hope that both of you will be there this year.
That's the plan. We're both coming, yeah. Looking forward to it. It's been a long time. Nice to be back in person.
And Eren, congratulations to UED for being a finalist in the ST Star Agency Association category again. It's pretty clear that schools think you're doing an amazing job. You must also be looking forward to the first in-person Falca AGM, as well as meeting school partners again.
That's right. Thanks for your words. I mean, being shortlisted is a quite privileged thing for a non-profit agent association, and also being appointed by the schools are quite important for us. Thanks for everyone. And yes, meeting face to face was something we used to do every year, and we didn't know how valuable it was. And after the pandemic, just being in the same room with other people, shaking hands, talking, asking how is the family, that was quite important for us. And I think this is quite important. I'm just looking forward to being in London. And that's the same for the Falca as well. For the Falca board, we have been doing meetings every month, maybe sometimes twice a month. But again, it was over the Zoom, and it was all right. But meeting face to face is totally different story. So I'm looking forward to being there.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, that brings us up to date with all the stories this week. So at this point, we'll open up to the audience to see if there are any questions for our guests or for the Study Travel team. These can be on any of the stories or topics we have discussed. So whilst we're waiting, if there's anybody that's got any burning questions, we've got some backups just to ask Eren, the activity for UED, what's going on with the association? What are you working on in the future?
I mean, we have done our first internal workshop in Gaziantep this year. That was one of the cities where we have our member agencies, and we will continue doing one online and one face-to-face event every year. These are going to be B2B events where we introduce our partner institutions with our new members and establish relations with the existing members. So we will continue doing 2 meetings, one face-to-face, one online every year. And also we are developing new projects to improve the service quality. During the pandemic time, most agencies lost their staff. Most staff were not on paid, and they leave the business. So we need a kind of way to improve our number of staff. This is quite important for us. We need to get new people on the business. So training new people, encouraging them to take part in the agency is one of our priorities for the next year.
Fantastic, thank you. And actually, that's a question that we could ask Tamsin. Have you had any staff issues since sort of opening back up to students? Are you sort of trying to increase capacity, or are you okay?
Oh yeah, I mean, we've had to hire a lot of staff, and I think it's hit us, across all of our roles in the organization. Obviously, when the borders were closed in Canada at the beginning of COVID, student numbers really went down, and we had to let teachers go, and some of them chose to go to other professions. So all the schools, I think, had a difficulty staffing back up with qualified teachers, but we're back up now. And where it also hit us was, summer camps, operating junior programs. Every year, we have staff that, join us, train with us in sort of junior roles and work their way up to senior roles. And when you close for 2 years, as all junior centers did in Canada, that kind of leaves a gap. So it meant, obviously, more effort, more resources had to go into recruiting for our junior centers this year than we've ever had to do. Now we're well set for next year, and we'll continue to expand the number of centers we open next year. But we didn't open with our full complement of 7 junior centers in 2022 because we were concerned, partly because we were concerned about staffing. So it's definitely a challenge for all the businesses, not just in education. In Canada in general, everyone's complaining about staff shortages. It's impacting service levels across all industries. You kind of wonder where everyone went, during COVID. Like, where did everyone go?
A lot became delivery drivers in the UK. A lot, yeah.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
We do have a question from Tracy Springer. It's probably more geared towards yourself, Tamsin, or maybe Eren. But is there a particular city in Canada now that is very appealing, or more so? Montreal, Vancouver, Calgary. You know, what's getting the bums on seats?
Look, I think, you know, Vancouver and Toronto are still the beachheads of Canada. It's where, you know, most big schools will have at least Vancouver and Canada in their portfolio. And then, you know, when you want to pick up more business, you open in more regional areas. I think Canada in general is just popular, but, you know, we've seen increasing demand in our Whistler location since reopening in January of this year. And part of that is due to the shortage of staff that we just talked about. Whistler has more jobs than people. And so it's creating an opportunity for some amazing work experience for our vocational school students. So that's driving a lot of the demand for Whistler, because they, you know, we're able to place students into fantastic job opportunities there. But I think, you know, I see different markets are drawn to different locations. And part of that is historical, where families have migrated into Canada, but also some of it has to do with regional activities and what immigration policies. So, for example, Canada has, each province has their own immigration schemes, and we call BC1 the Provincial Nominee Program. And recently in British Columbia, there's been a PNP, Provincial Nominee Program, focused on tech workers. So that's drawing a lot of people to study in the tech fields in British Columbia. So immigration policy and regional immigration policy will definitely drive a lot of the demand for certain cities in Canada, and incentives as well, provincial incentives to study. Yeah.
And same for you, Eren. Is there a particular destination in Canada that's
Yes, I mean, it's been a problematic issue for us, because all Turks want to go to Toronto, because there was only direct flights at that time. So there has been a Turkish community in Toronto, but now we are getting inquiries for different cities. And some students even come for us for destinations out of big cities, well-known cities, because the living expenses would be obviously much more affordable for international students. The possibility to learn English would be much easier in some destinations, because Toronto has become like a Turkish community city. So everywhere the students go, they hear Turkish. And Vancouver is doing great, but other destinations, smaller cities like London or Niagara, is getting more and more students.
Okay, thank you. And that looks like that's the end of our audience Q&A, which brings us to the end of this week's Study Travel TV Live.
Our next episode will be on Wednesday, the 24th of August at the same time of 4 p.m. BST. Visit the Study Travel TV Live page on the Study Travel Network, which you can find under the magazine section in the menu. We'll be announcing the guest speakers for the next broadcast, as well as a recording of this episode and past episodes.
So that's it for today. We'd like to say a big thank you to our special guests. Eren, thank you for your time and insights today.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be with you again, and hope to see you in London.
And Tamsin, thank you for joining us and sharing your thoughts. We look forward to seeing you again soon too.
Oh, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure, and really looking forward to seeing you and everyone in London in a few weeks.
Thank you again to our sponsor this week, Londonist, and thanks to everyone for watching. Goodbye.